At dusk in Boston, on the 33rd floor of a downtown skyscraper, Mary Harrison was making final revisions to a report with a looming deadline. Looking across the narrow corridor of the investment analysis department, she noticed she was the only one working overtime. With a deep sigh, she looked away from her monitor to watch the city lights beginning to twinkle outside the window. Working late again? Her colleague Linda peeked in with a smile. Who are you trying to impress? Mary shrugged. Force of habit, she said with a slightly bitter smile. Mary was an ordinary woman by all appearances. Her brown hair was cut to shoulder length, with understated makeup and a conservative suit. Though plain in appearance, her mind was sharp, and the investment analysis reports she produced consistently received high praise. However, she never boasted about them herself. Mary's cell phone rang, with Mom appearing on the screen. Checking the time, it was already past 7:30. Typical of her mother Elizabeth to call right on schedule. Hello, Mom. Mary, still at work? Her mother's voice carried a hint of reproach. Are you ready for the Florida trip? Don't forget I'm coming to your house at 8 a.m. the day after tomorrow. Of course, I haven't forgotten, Mary said. The annual family vacation felt more like an obligation than something to look forward to. Taylor has already arrived. She and your father are talking about your new apartment. They're wondering if moving was a waste of money. Mary closed her eyes and counted to 3. My apartment is lovely. I can easily afford it with my own income. Yes, but Taylor already owned a townhouse at your age. It didn't take long for her sister Taylor to enter the Harrison family conversation. After graduating from Harvard Law School, Taylor worked at a prestigious law firm in Boston. The perfect sister. Her parents' pride and joy. Mom, I need to finish this report. I'll call you later, Mary said gently, but her mother had already moved on to the next topic. Have you seen Dad's new yacht? It's on his Instagram. Isn't it magnificent? We'll be taking it on this trip. That's nice, Mary answered absently. Complimenting her father George's latest toy was the expected response. After hanging up, Mary let out a deep sigh. She had grown up in a wealthy family. Her father George was the president of a real estate development company, and her mother Elizabeth was known in the local community as a philanthropist. From the outside, the Harrison family looked perfect, beautiful home, social status, and 2 daughters. But inside, it was different. From childhood, Mary had always heard, "Why can't you be more like Taylor?" Taylor excelled at everything effortlessly, academics, sports, socializing, while Mary always struggled. Her achievements were constantly compared to her sisters and found wanting. So I'll spend a week on a yacht starting the day after tomorrow, she murmured. Deep down, she dreaded this trip. The prolonged confinement with her family in a closed space was mental torture for her. Every year, she returned from these trips emotionally drained. She finished her report and shut down her computer. On her way home, she bought a coffee and headed to her apartment. Tomorrow was her last day at work before vacation. And the day after tomorrow, her fun family time in the Florida Keys would begin. Mary told herself, this year will be different. This year, she was determined to stay strong even if she was ignored, compared, and criticized. It was time to stop being hurt by the words, "Why can't you be more like Taylor?" Still, a small hope burned in the depths of her heart. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe her family would notice her recent successes at work. Maybe. Her phone rang again. This time it was a message from her father, "Don't forget to pack formal wear for the trip. I've arranged to meet important clients in the Keys. Taylor is preparing a presentation." Mary sighed. It seemed this year wouldn't be any different after all. The Florida sun beat down mercilessly. George Harrison's new yacht, Sea Lion, docked at a private marina in Key West Harbor, gleamed with its white hull in the morning light. Mary walked along the pier carrying her heavy bag. Her family was already waiting for her on deck. "You're late," Elizabeth said. She was dressed in the perfect, wealthy vacationer style with a wide-brimmed straw hat and white linen dress. "Good morning, Mary," Taylor waved from the deck. She was already relaxing in a deck chair, sunbathing in sunglasses and a bikini. We've been waiting for 30 minutes. My plane was delayed, Mary explained. In reality, she had arrived on time but had trouble with the rental car procedure at the airport. Father George looked up from the yacht's control panel. Finally here. Now, put your luggage down below and we'll depart right away, he ordered without looking at his daughter. Mary quietly obeyed and headed to the cabin. In her heart, anxiety about this trip was growing, especially about the destination her father had called a special place. My private island, George proudly declared at the breakfast table. They were enjoying cheese omelets and fresh fruit in the yacht's luxurious dining area. Well, not exactly mine. It's a small island that the company occasionally rents for client entertainment. No one is using it this weekend. Isn't that wonderful, Mary? Taylor said. Dad is celebrating my recent big court victory. Remember? The Millennium Tech lawsuit? Mary raised her coffee cup to her lips. Yes, I heard about it, she answered quietly. In fact, she had recently achieved a major success herself. An investment strategy based on her analysis report had brought the company millions in profits. But she never had the chance to talk about it. Mary, how are you doing? Still at that little investment firm? Elizabeth asked. Her voice always carried a slight hint of disappointment. Mom, my company isn't small. In Boston, it's. By the way, Taylor interrupted, Ben Crawford invited me to dinner next weekend. You know, the hedge fund guy. Her parents' attention immediately shifted to Taylor. Mary's words vanished into thin air. It was always like this. The sea was calm, and the yacht was smoothly heading toward a small island. Mary stood at the bow, feeling the wind and looking at the outline of the island in the distance. Her father stood beside her. That's our destination for today, George pointed. It's small but a beautiful place. Private beach, small forest, and nothing else. The perfect getaway, don't you think? Mary smiled. It's lovely, Dad, she said. By the way, my report on the East Asian market last month brought significant profits to the company's clients. The vice president. Have you heard about Taylor? George didn't seem to be listening to his daughter. She's a candidate for the next partner promotion. I'm proud of her. Mary nodded silently. The sea breeze caressed her cheeks coldly. The island was small as George had described, but certainly charming. White sandy beach, turquoise blue sea, and a small tropical forest spreading inland. The yacht anchored in shallow water, and the group went ashore in a small boat. Let's prepare for the picnic, Elizabeth declared as soon as she set foot on the beach. Taylor, help me with the sunshade. Mary naturally became the person carrying the luggage. She silently transported the heavy cooler box and baskets, setting everything up in the spot chosen by her parents and Taylor. Is this okay? She asked, wiping away sweat. Elizabeth looked around critically. The tablecloth is crooked. And the drinks should be placed more in the shade. Mary took a deep breath and made the corrections as instructed. Lunch was lavish. Lobster salad, assorted fruits, champagne. The conversation was filled, as usual, with talk of Taylor's work and George's business successes. Mary, isn't it time you thought about marriage? Elizabeth suddenly asked. You're already 32. When I was your age, I was already pregnant with you. Mary gripped her wine glass tightly. I'm focusing on my career right now, Mom. But opportunities to meet good men your age are diminishing. You need to be more proactive, like Taylor. Taylor smiled smugly. I'll take you to my firm's party next time. There are plenty of single lawyers there. If there's anyone who would be satisfied with me, Mary said quietly. That attitude is why you're still alone, Elizabeth sighed. Mary stood up. I'm going for a walk. No one tried to stop her. Mary left the beach and headed toward the interior of the island. Entering the small forest, she was able to escape the noise. Finding a small clearing among the trees, she sat down. She was exhausted, not so much physically, but mentally drained. Always the same, she murmured. When will they ever see me? Sunlight filtered through the trees, creating warm patches of light. Mary closed her eyes. Just a little rest. She closed her tired eyes and let go of consciousness in the dappled sunlight. When she woke up, the first thing she noticed was that the angle of light had changed. It was evening. Checking her watch in panic, she saw that more than 2 hours had passed. Mary quickly got up and started running toward the beach. As she emerged from the forest, a shocking sight greeted her. Her father, mother, and Taylor were boarding the yacht's boat. All the picnic equipment had been packed up. Wait! Mary shouted. Are you leaving me behind? The three turned around. Taylor had a suppressed smile. Elizabeth looked confused. And George, he was laughing. Finally awake. Just a little joke, George said. However, he showed no sign of getting off the boat. A joke. Mary ran across the beach, breathless. Wait, is this really? You can swim back yourself, George laughed loudly. It's only 500 meters. You can swim that, can't you? Dad, this isn't funny, Mary said as she approached the boat. It'll be a memory for life, Taylor giggled. She had already started the boat's engine. George, are you sure about this? Elizabeth looked at her husband with slight hesitation. She's an adult, Elizabeth. Let her have a little adventure, George placed his hand on his wife's shoulder. Now, let's go. Wait. Mary cried, but the boat was already moving. Taylor looked back and waved. Have fun, sis. Mary collapsed to her knees. Sitting on the sandy beach, she watched in disbelief as the boat carrying her family headed toward the yacht. This was no joke. They really intended to leave her behind. The boat reached the yacht, and she saw the three of them boarding. Soon after, the sound of the yacht's engine echoed across the island, and the white hull slowly began to move. Mary stood up and desperately waved her hands. Come back, she shouted. This isn't funny. But the yacht continued without changing course, gradually moving away. Mary stood dumbfounded, watching the ship carrying her family disappear into the horizon. She was left alone on an unfamiliar island. As the sun began to sink into the sea, Mary was wrapped in loneliness and fear. She sat on the beach and checked her cell phone again. The NO service display remained unchanged. She had tried to make calls several times, but it was useless. They really aren't coming back, she whispered in a trembling voice. For the first few hours, Mary shook with anger. This was just a prank, she told herself, soon her family would return, laughing. But as time passed, reality weighed heavily on her. They had truly abandoned her. Looking around the darkening beach, she stood up. Only the remnants of the picnic, a tablecloth, some leftover bread, and a bottle of wine, remained on the island. Mary gathered these items and began preparing to spend the night. At least I have water, she counted the bottles of mineral water. 3 bottles. If she rationed them, they would last a day. As night fully arrived, the Florida sea breeze felt cold. She wrapped the tablecloth around her body and curled up on the sandy beach. Only the sound of waves accompanied her lonely night. Why, she questioned the starry sky. What did I do? Tears streamed down her cheeks. Since childhood, Mary had tried to meet her parents' expectations. Good grades, good college, good job. But it was never enough. Taylor was always one step ahead, capturing their parents' attention. But she hadn't expected this kind of treatment. Because of the cold night wind and fear, she barely slept. With the dawn, she struggled to her feet with a frozen body. First, let's explore the island, she told herself. There might be a water source. Maybe food too. As she began walking inland, she realized the island was a bit larger than she thought. After passing through the small forest, there was another beach on the opposite side. Mary decided to circle the island, hoping to find something useful. The circumference of the island took about an hour to walk. Unfortunately, she didn't find any freshwater source. However, she discovered some coconut trees. Mary succeeded in knocking down some young coconuts by throwing stones. "At least I won't die of dehydration," she murmured, satisfied with this small victory. Climbing to the highest point of the island, she surveyed her surroundings. Blue sea stretching to the horizon. Was there a way to call for help? She tied the tablecloth to a tree branch, making an improvised flag. To be noticeable. All day, she kept watch for any ships appearing in the distance. In the afternoon, she managed to catch a small fish with her bare hands. Although she was reluctant to eat it raw, hunger won out. "I will survive," she resolved. "And I'll show them that I'm stronger than they imagine." By the evening of the second day, Mary's hope was beginning to fade. Water was running low, and she was exhausted from sunburn and fatigue. She climbed back to the high point of the island and stared at the horizon. And then, it appeared like a miracle. A small dot on the horizon. A ship. Mary stood up and waved her arms widely. "Over here," she shouted. "Help!" She ran down to the beach, racing across the burning sand with bare feet. She held the tablecloth and waved it frantically. The ship slowly approached. Mary's heart leaped with hope. It was a large yacht, looking much more luxurious than her father's. "Help!" she continued to shout until her voice gave out. The yacht stopped about 200 meters offshore. A small boat was lowered, and two men got in. They began rowing toward the beach. Mary collapsed to her knees in relief. She was saved. As the boat approached, the figure of one man became clearly visible. He had suntanned skin and sharp eyes, wearing casual sailing attire. The other man appeared to be a young crew member. "Are you all right?" The older man was the first to disembark when the boat reached the sandy beach. His voice was deep and authoritative. "Yes, no." Mary answered in a confused state. "I was left behind." The man approached her, seeming to quickly assess the situation. His sharp eyes studied Mary's exhausted figure, and he immediately took action. He gave instructions to the crew, who promptly brought a bottle of water from the boat. Mary drank gratefully. Moistening her throat, she felt some strength returning. "My name is James Montgomery," the man introduced himself. "I own this island." Mary looked at the man in surprise. "The owner?" "Yes. This is private property," James said. "I happened to be sailing by for the weekend. I was surprised to see someone on the island. Usually, no one is here without prior permission." Mary's expression mixed embarrassment with relief. "I'm sorry. My family." "Let's talk slowly," James said gently. "First, let's get back to the yacht. You need rest and proper food." Mary nodded and boarded the boat with James's help. The yacht's interior was luxurious. Mary took a shower, changed into clean clothes, and was escorted to the dining room where James was waiting. The table was set with light food and drinks. "Now, please tell me your name and why you were here," James asked calmly. "I'm Mary Harrison." She took a deep breath. "My family left me on the island as a joke." James's eyebrow raised. "A joke?" Mary told him everything. Her father's yacht, the family trip, and the moment they laughingly left her behind. As she spoke, she tried to hold back tears, but her voice trembled. James's expression gradually hardened. "That's not a joke, but an illegal act," he said with quiet anger. "Trespassing and abandonment. Your family could face legal consequences." Mary looked up in surprise. "Legal consequences?" "No, I don't want." "Mary," James gazed at her with serious eyes. "You were in mortal danger. Think about what could have happened if I hadn't passed by." His words sank heavily into Mary's heart. Indeed, she had been in a truly dangerous situation. "I too once experienced betrayal by those I trusted most," James suddenly began a personal story. A shadow of distant memory floated in his eyes. "A man who was both my business partner and close friend embezzled company assets behind my back. Just as you trusted your family, I trusted him. And we were both betrayed. Mary stared at James in silence. She felt a strange empathy with this well-known businessman's words. "I'd like to give your family the punishment they deserve," James said quietly. "But not through legal means, in a more educational way." "What do you mean?" Mary asked. James smiled. "Tell me about your work. I want to know the real you." Mary was surprised but began talking about her investment analysis job, successful projects, and efforts that went unrecognized by her family. As she spoke, her voice regained confidence. James listened carefully, occasionally asking sharp questions. Gradually, a color of respect appeared in his eyes. "You have exceptional talent, Mary," he finally said. "And you should be surrounded by people who properly appreciate that." The day faded, and the starry sky was visible from the yacht's windows. Mary and James's conversation continued. They found common interests, and topics ranged from business strategies to world affairs. "Tomorrow, I'll take you back to the mainland," James said. "But before that, I have a proposal." Mary looked at him expectantly. "My corporate group is looking for someone with your analytical skills," James said with a serious expression. "I want to properly value your talent. Of course, you don't need to decide immediately. Take time to think about it." Mary's heart leaped. Was this fate? Had her terrifying experience on the island opened a new door? "Thank you," she said. "I'll consider it seriously." James's yacht returned to Key West Harbor. Mary stood on the deck, remembering that just a few days ago, she had departed from this same harbor with her family. Unlike then, her heart now held a strange tranquility. "Have you made your decision?" James stood beside her and gently asked. Mary shifted her gaze from the sea to look at him. "Yes. I accept your offer." James smiled with satisfaction. "Good decision. Let's meet at the New York office on Monday." They parted at the hotel. Alone in her luxury hotel room, Mary pondered what to do next. First, she needed to contact her family. She hesitantly picked up her cell phone and called her mother. "Mary." Elizabeth's voice was filled with surprise. "Are you safe?" "Yes, Mom. I'm fine." Mary's voice was calm. "Everyone has been worried about what happened to you." She thought it was a lie. "Really? But you all left me on the island." There was silence on the other end of the phone. "That was Dad's idea. He thought you could use a little adventure." "Adventure?" Mary smiled bitterly. "Mom, that wasn't adventure, it was abandonment." "Don't be so dramatic," Elizabeth said in an excuse-making voice. "We planned to return after a few hours. But the sea got rough." Another lie. The weather had been perfect. "It's okay, Mom. A friend stopped by the island, and I was rescued. I'm safe in a hotel now." "A friend? What friend?" "Come home quickly. Dad will come get you." "No, that's not necessary," Mary said calmly. "I'm going to New York on Monday. I've got a new job." "What?" Elizabeth exclaimed in surprise. "But what about your job in Boston?" "I'm quitting." "Mom, I have to go. I'll be in touch later." Mary hung up the phone. Feeling a strange sense of liberation, she gazed out the window. This was a new beginning. The following Monday, Mary stepped into Montgomery International Headquarters in New York. From the office located on the top floor of the skyscraper, a breathtaking view of Manhattan spread out. James welcomed her warmly and immediately got down to business. "I want to maximize your analytical abilities. Let's start with evaluating our new investment projects." Mary's talent was quickly recognized. Her sharp analysis and intuitive market understanding brought the company significant profits. James praised her in public and included her in important meetings. She felt true appreciation and respect she had never experienced before. Meanwhile, she kept contact with her family to a minimum. She would only briefly respond to occasional calls from her mother. She rarely replied to messages from Taylor. Your family seems perplexed by your sudden change, James said one day. They were having dinner at an upscale Manhattan restaurant. Mary took a sip of wine. They're confused by my success, not my change. They're not used to seeing me recognized. James nodded thoughtfully. Actually, there's something I should tell you. I've been investigating your family's company. Mary looked up in surprise. Why? At first, it was mere curiosity. But as the investigation progressed, I discovered something interesting. James lowered his voice. Your father's company, Harrison Development, is in financial trouble. What? Mary asked in disbelief. But they always. The appearance might have been good, but the reality is different. Your father has been continuing unreasonable expansion for several years, and his debt is growing. The new yacht is just one example. Mary was speechless. Was their luxurious lifestyle actually built on sand? Through an investment group, I've been quietly buying up their shares, James continued softly. Soon I'll own enough stock to have influence over the management. Mary stared intently at James. Are you trying to punish my family? James returned her gaze directly. I'm a businessman. I just found a good investment opportunity. Although, I do think there are problems with the current management of that company. Mary was hit with complex emotions. Was this the revenge she wanted? Or simply the realization of justice? What are you thinking? James asked. I don't know, Mary answered honestly. They hurt me. But they're my family. Yes. That's why I respect your opinion. Let's decide together how to proceed. Months passed, and Mary was promoted to vice president of Montgomery International. Her name began appearing in economic magazines, and her analyses were highly regarded in the investment world. Meanwhile, James's plan was steadily progressing. He had acquired 40% of Harrison Development's shares and was demanding a seat on the board of directors. Contact from her family increased as well. At first, it was just short, "How are you?" messages from her mother, but eventually, her father also began calling. Mary, it's been a while. George's voice didn't sound as confident as before. Seems like you're doing well in New York. Yes, Dad. I'm very fulfilled. Good. He paused slightly. Actually, I wanted to consult with you about the company. Mary sensed a weakness in her father's voice that she had never heard before. Is something wrong? No, nothing serious. Just, a new investor has appeared, and the situation is changing a bit. Later, Taylor also contacted her. Sis, you're amazing lately. Her voice mixed with a respect that wasn't there before. Should we meet up sometime? Mary responded coolly to these contacts. She didn't want revenge. Rather, she just wanted to face her family on equal terms. A year later, James and Mary headed to Boston. It was the day of Harrison Development's new board meeting. James had become the leading shareholder with the authority to determine the company's direction. The Harrison family was invited to dinner with James at an upscale Boston restaurant. Mary entered the restaurant with quiet excitement and anxiety. Her family was already seated at the table. Father George, Mother Elizabeth, and Sister Taylor. Their expressions were stiff and tense. When Mary entered, all three faces turned to her simultaneously. Mary. Elizabeth stood up and tried to embrace her daughter. Her attitude was clearly different from before. Hello, Mom, Mary greeted calmly. George and Taylor also stood up and exchanged awkward greetings. They all seemed to be expecting something. A helping hand, protection, or perhaps forgiveness. Is Mr. Montgomery not here yet? George asked anxiously. He'll be here soon, Mary said. A heavy silence fell. Mary looked at these people who once looked down on her, now sitting anxiously before her. They had lost their company and their social credibility had declined. The former arrogance was nowhere to be seen. The restaurant door opened, and James entered. The moment they saw him, the blood drained from the faces of the three Harrisons. George's expression changed dramatically in particular. You? George stared at James in disbelief. James approached the table and stood next to Mary. Smiling, he surveyed the Harrison family. "It's been a while, Mr. Harrison," James said quietly. "Let me formally introduce myself. James Montgomery. I'm the owner of the island where you abandoned your daughter." Words disappeared from the three faces. They stared alternately at Mary and James, at a loss for words. "Cheers." Mary raised her champagne glass and looked around at her family seated at the table. In the summer twilight, Manhattan streets gleamed golden from the New York penthouse. "To our new beginning." Everyone clinked glasses to her words. 3 years had passed since that shocking confrontation. James had completely taken Harrison Development under his wing and had given George a position as manager of a new small-scale project. The former us-deal George had now learned humility and was using his talents within a limited scope. "The results of the recent Young Talent Development Program are wonderful, Dad," Mary smiled at her father. George nodded a bit sheepishly. "It's thanks to your advice." Taylor had quit the law firm and was now working for a non-profit organization. Her legal knowledge was being used to help the underprivileged. "I'm rooting for your environmental lawsuit next week," Mary told her sister. "Thank you," Taylor responded sincerely. The relationship between the two had changed from competition to cooperation. And Elizabeth had undergone the biggest change. She had obtained a family therapist qualification and was now giving lectures on the theme of building true family relationships. "Last week's lecture was a great success," Elizabeth reported happily. "I think it gave many people a chance to think about the true meaning of family." James smiled quietly next to Mary. He had respected Mary's decision to choose rebuilding rather than revenge. The punishment for the Harrison family was not to destroy them, but to give them the opportunity to become a true family. "Now, a word from me," James raised his glass. "We all make choices in life. Who to love, who to trust, who to call family. Blood ties are coincidental, but true bonds are created by choice." He sent a gentle look to Mary. The two had become good partners, supporting each other in both work and private life. It wasn't a romantic relationship, but their bond was deeper than that. "Finally, from me," Mary stood up and raised her glass. "A real family is the people who bring out the best in you. People who accept each other's weaknesses, celebrate strengths, and help each other grow." She looked at her parents and sister. Tears glistened in their eyes. "We took a roundabout path, but I think we've finally become a real family." Outside the window, Manhattan's lights began to illuminate all at once. Like the beginning of a new night, a new future spread before them. Mary clinked her glass with James's and smiled slightly. Sometimes life's worst events can bring about the best turning points. The day she was abandoned on the island was the darkest day of her life. But now, looking back, she thought it was the first step toward the light.